animals. Thanks for coming. And what we're going to do is maybe do like a few minutes of, I got a bunch of questions to ask you that maybe you have in your head, maybe not. So I'll ask those. You can answer them as you want to. And then we'll go into a reading of a selection of the novel. And then afterwards, there's questions from the audience. If there are any, you guys can totally spin them. So is that okay? Sounds good? And there are plenty of novels to purchase back here. Thank you to Joseph Beth Booksellers. It's been a great, I think, debut for you because you've had so many great reviews and such a great, I guess, just really good, people are thinking it's great. So I wanted to start by, when we had lunch yesterday and with Bill and I, who helps run the place. I'll give you a little story about this place. I don't know if you guys know about it, but it's in the name of an outsider artist named Raymond Thundersky. We have some of his work here, and basically he was an outsider artist that would tour the city of Cincinnati with a toolbox, and he would dress up like a clown and a construction worker combined, and he would draw demolition sites all over the city. We have like about 2,300 of his drawings archived that you're welcome to look at raymondthundersky.org. But we were talking about the reason that Bill called us up and said he would like to have a reading here, and it was about outsider art. And we talked about a guy named James Hampton, who, if you like outsider art, you might know him. He did this thing called the Throne of the Third Heaven of the Nation's Millennium General Assembly in 1950, which is in the Smithsonian now. And it's gorgeous, and it's made out of gold, silver, aluminum foil. It's made out of plastic, wood furniture, anything you could find. And it took him 15 or 14 years to create, and it was the only thing he made. Hopefully it's the only thing you made. But it took Bill 14 years to write this book, which I just discovered today. And then in his garage, at James Hampton's garage, where he made the piece over the 14 years, was this verse from Proverbs 29:18, where there is no vision, the people perish. And everything kind of combines when you think about it, because the book is kind of like a visionary journey you're taking with a guy that often isn't in the central focus of a book. And so what I wanted to start with, if that's okay, is where did Cuthbert Handley come from? And then I'll move on from there. So is that okay to start?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and thank you all for being here, by the way. And I want to say thanks to, Thunder Sky and Keith Banner and Bill Ross for being here, and having me here, because it's a really great gallery. And I hope you guys get a chance at some point to kind of get involved, because it's a very moving experience to learn more about it. When I was living in Houston, I think it's been in some of the news stories, I got to know quite a few men who had pretty serious mental illness, and I was interested in them, and I would give them rides sometimes, and a lot of times they had fixed incomes, or they were not, they didn't have homes sometimes. They were had problems with housing, and there was one guy in particular, a friend, who would occasionally take on outings. We took him to the Houston Zoo once. This is in Houston. Did I say that? Okay. I was in Houston, and I took him to the London Zoo, the Houston Zoo, and I got separated from him at one point and encountered him talking to the howler monkeys there in this kind of sort of sweet talking to the animals, and with a kind of sort of tenderness and sincerity that I'd never really witnessed in people just talking to animals at a zoo, and it just kind of blew my mind. I'd never seen anything like that, and right after that, I moved to London, and I didn't have the Houston Zoo to kind of kick around anymore, and so I started going to the London Zoo and visiting it, and I just was very interested in people with schizophrenia. A lot of times, because of their illness, they end up on the streets or in just difficult situations. And but their imagination and things are so often, not always, but often so fertile and to me interesting. And that's kind of how Cuthbert came around for me.
So you got Cuthbert, who's like the central figure, and then you have the world with which he's kind of trying to thrive. So that was my next question, which is how did you build this world around him? Because I guess you started with Cuthbert, and then you had to figure out the world that he was going to inhabit and carry his journey through. So what about the world you made? Because it's very, very, I don't know, how many people have read it yet? So good. All I'm talking about is like it's a very textured, layered, dense, beautiful dystopia that Bill has created. So like, I guess I'd like you to talk, if that's okay, to that world you made, because you have this beautiful character, and then how did you figure out the world that he would inhabit?
Well, I really tried to focus on keeping it in one place. Aristotle has his unities, unity of place, unity of time, unity of action. And so unity of place was to just kind of home in on the zoo. I wanted to keep everything in one place. And really, that became a kind of psychogeography, that I built out from the zoo. And, in London, the zoo it's in the middle of this beautiful park called Regent's Park. And Regent's Park is in this beautiful, interesting town called London. And it kind of went out from there. There's a secondary place in the novel, which is Worcestershire, and old Worcestershire, and that's where my father's from. So that was where that came from.
If you don't know, which you probably don't because you haven't read it yet, a lot of people, it takes place in a future in 2015.
2052.
52, why did I say 50? Sorry, 2052. And it's about the way that politics has played a role in the way things are shaped for Cuthbert. So I guess that's another part of how did you build this world is how did you build this vortex of politics, power, care, all the stuff that you kind of defined and helped his struggle through. How did you kind of come up with that? I'm always interested in how people come up with stuff. So how did you figure that out, or how did you want to make that look, or all that stuff?
Well, I feel like some of it, I don't know how.
I know, it's kind of amazing.
It's like, I feel like it was a kind of a gift, and but I was interested in what would happen if you brought the aristocracy back, like in a real powerful way. What would happen if the aristocracy had real political power and could really get things done? And so I took the present royal family, the Windsors, with currently Queen Elizabeth II, and I created a fictionalized version of Prince Harry, who's kind of a bit of a rake of a royal. I think he has a little bit of that reputation, and I sort of imagined what would it be like if he was reinvested with real political power, and so he becomes a tyrant. And I don't think I'm going to get any invitations to Buckingham Palace.
No. And people who are working class or people who work for a living have to give up their right to vote to be in this world. I mean, so there's all kinds of issues around the fact that he's the leader now. So I mean, it's like it leads the whole kind of book toward its trajectory, right? I think
it becomes a two-tier society.
Yeah.
It's sort of, it's definitely influenced by what I myself have seen and what you all have seen happening to our world, where the middle class is disappearing, and it's the middle class is imperiled, and we have the rich and the poor, and it's a lot of economists who in my perspective said that we're living in a world that's going to see a rise of more and more oligarchies, and we see it happening. But it's just it is also just a kind of a fantasy. It's a shadow. I hope it doesn't happen that way.
Well, and I think a lot of people are interested too because of Brexit and all that stuff. So I'm sure you're getting a lot of stuff about that.
It's crazy, yeah.
Yeah. So do you want to talk about that a little bit about Brexit, and I mean, it was serendipity, obviously, because you couldn't have,
Yeah.
unless you were like totally, ESP psychic or whatever, but.
No, yeah.
You are, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, buy the book.
I say I have a time machine, but you're gonna learn about that next week. So, no, the Brexit, so in the novel, the EU is broken up and Britain becomes independent, and people would, I mean, the journalists have gone crazy over that, and I've had a lot of inquiries. I got interviewed by the BBC a couple days ago, and more is coming, and the Guardian had an article, the American novel that predicted Brexit, and I mean, I'm sort of amused. I'm glad it's getting attention. Brexit is a term that was, just invented a couple years ago. So my novel I was writing, since the beginning of the 2000s. I don't know. It's been a really great way to get attention.
Yeah, that's all you get for. So attention seeking, right? Yeah.
That's been I mean, I'm really hoping people will read the book about, a man who's homeless and is trying to let animals go free,
Right. Well, I think that brings you to a point too, and hopefully we'll get to your reading in about 5-10 minutes. I'll shut up. But like 14 years, right, it took to write this thing.
Yeah.
So you want to like maybe go through what that was like? I mean, because it's 14 years is a long time.
It's so funny because like, I mean, I want to say, Keith Banner, he was I met him at Miami in the writing program there, and he said nothing about himself so far. He was such an incredible influence on me. It was huge. I mean, his novel, the Life I Lead, came out in '99, was it?
Yeah.
On Knopf, and it was an incredibly courageous novel that was doing things that a lot of people just are not willing to do, and his stories were about often people who were down and out, or just working people, and I was really inspired by his artistic courage, and also a lot of just your sensibility, and jealous of it too, I should say. What was the question again?
I wanted to ask, what took 14 years? Because it's
gorgeous,
but thank you for doing that. So.
Well, the reason I mentioned this stuff about Keith was because I remember, like, when I knew him at Miami, we were in these graduate seminars, and
some of the folks here
with Mary Jean Corbett. We were both in the same classes with Mary Jean and Kay was my first creative writing professor. So, this is like, it's incredible to be here. But I remember one thing Keith would say, because I often, even back then, it took a long time for me to write, and I would often kind of complain about the process and, say, oh, it's so hard, and I'm so tortured. And I remember Keith was, kind of like, oh, tortured artist. And I heard this for years in my head, as I'm taking year after year to write this book, and because it was miserable, the experience of writing this book. It was miserable. And whenever I say that, I think of Keith, like, oh, it couldn't be that bad, or something like that. But it was really hard, and it's great when people can churn them out. But it did not happen for me, and I had to battle for every chapter was a battle, and it was just really hard. We had a family, had to make a living, and I wrote 2 complete manuscripts that didn't seem to work, and it was really like the third one seemed to be the one that worked, So fail, success.
And that brings us to the question you wanted me to totally ask was like, what is it like having a book deal and having all this stuff happen? Because it's like it is interesting. So
it's absolutely stunningly unreal. I didn't never expected it at all. Really didn't. And it wasn't just a book deal, it was a really good book deal. With a great publisher, and it changed my life. I mean, it really did. We were able to, we were in a dangerous neighborhood where there was there was a lot of crime, and we were able to move to a safer neighborhood, and that was nice, able to pay back some student debt and stuff like that. And, it made it worth it. It does not pay for as much as it costs to, at least for me, it was so many years of, not doing things that you do to help yourself financially. You put into the work, and I'm glad I did, but it was hard. It was hard enough. So the book deal seemed appropriately big to me because it helped kind of restore a sense of balance in the force,
Well, this is the last one, and then we'll do the reading at 6:30.
Okay,
I'm
sure.
very time driven. I don't think I've done this, but I guess I want to end it on this quote from actually the wall text, the exhibition label. I'm going to bring it back to James Hampton because it's kind of fun. He praises America's greatest work of art when he did. James Hampton's Broun reveals one man's faith in God as well as his hope for salvation. Although Hampton did not live to initiate a public ministry, the capping phrase, "fear not," summarizes his project's universally eloquent message. And I guess I wanted to ask, how did having a total outsider, right, especially in this dystopian universe that you created for him to be in, how did that transform or alter or delineate the story? Is that I mean,
yeah. Oh no, that's.
I think that's kind of what I wanted to hit up as you read is how did that change the way the story would go?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the novel is about an old man who's struggling with his demons, who decides the impossible. He's going to let all these very dangerous but beautiful animals out of cages, and that's what he does. He goes about to set free all these beautiful, dangerous animals. And it was only in the last year that I realized that's art, That's art. I mean, that you try to sort of release these things, that you try to craft them, and it's hard, and it can be dangerous. And sometimes it doesn't work very well, but sometimes it does, and so, I think I don't think it's the only thing that the book is about, but it is, I realized last year that it's partly about a kind of artistic process, it's about the thing that any creative person, in any industry goes through. You have to believe in yourself, and you have to, or at least believe in your vision, and you have to pursue it without fear. You have to let the tigers go free.
Right. That's such a brilliant intro to your reading, right? So
Okay, great. Yeah.
Is that cool?
Sure.
So I'm gonna let you go up to the music stand.
Sure.
Between the Two Ferns is over with now.
Yeah.
And then you can totally read. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So this is short, and it's in the book. It's 1, 2, 3, 4.5 pages. So it takes about 10 minutes. If you want to go out, feel free. And I'm not fussy about readings. I don't it's okay if you start snoring or whatever. I just set it up a little bit. It's towards the end of the book, actually, but it's a section that sort of stands alone, and it's about this moment where these jackals have been let out of they're one of the first animals that Cuthbert releases are the jackals. And the jackals are running around town, and they're dogs. They are dogs. And And so the jackals go to this part of London, Marylebone, and then move down towards Oxford Street. And they encounter a man who is dying of cancer. And he's a hedge fund trader, and he's shown up on Harley Street, which is this very wealthy, it's a place where people go for private medicine if you have the money in Britain, and it's where the best doctors are. It's where the Queen's doctors are. And so he goes there, and then the jackals leave him and go to a church, and they visit a priest at the church. So I think that's all the setup that it needs. So it's called Father Drury and his dogs, the dogs in quotes. After leaving Regent's Park, the jackals released earlier snouted around for a long time in a shadowy rubbish collection point behind a gastropub on Marylebone Road. They scrounged among lemon rinds and stale loaves of bread and licked sweet dark oil leaking from a broken deep fryer. The canines would dart away whenever any of the workers came outside to dump bottles and cans or to take cigarette breaks, but always drifted back, more nervous and irritated. This is very late at night, early morning hours. Eventually, the jackals managed to tip a giant blue recycling bin filled with lager cans, and the huge clatter scared them away. But the pack was in a bit of a state now, a peculiarly canine blend of curiosity, fear, and bloodlust. They ran south into Marylebone proper, staying close together and attracting almost no attention. It was May Day. An emaciated young hedge fund trader who normally monitored the Asian markets at night was crouched, wide awake, in his new glider outside the famed London clinic. They have gliders instead of cars. So. He had taken off work to wait for an appointment at 7 a.m. He had been unable to concentrate on his accounts. He was trying to eat a carton of Kung Pao prawns and crab puffs picked up in Chinatown. It wasn't going well. Like Dr. Bajwa, another character, he had metastatic lung cancer, although he had never smoked. Yet unlike Dr. Bajwa, his had been discovered cruelly late. It seemed to be in the air, like radon gas. His appetite had been absent for weeks. He kept putting prawns to his mouth and taking them out. When he saw the jackals, he rolled down the window and clicked his fingers to attract them. "Hello," he said. "Come on, Busters, let's have a pat." Sorry about my non-British accent. That's a good reason to get the audiobooks. The jackals at times showed few inhibitions around people if it served their purposes. One trotted up and began licking the traces of sweet peanutty sauce off the trader's bony fingers. The man was lonely. He had faced his disease so far with great valor, but he was far away from his family and friends in Yorkshire. He thought of his small collie, Barney, from his childhood, a loyal little animal who used to chase hares in the beetroot field across the lane. He wondered if he ought to move home to die. "You're right good sorts," he said. "Right good types." The other dogs surrounded the hand and the good smell wafting from the car. "That's it," he said. "That's it." The trader looked around the street. He saw no one. He turned the carton upside down and let all the food fall on the pavement. One of the jackals lunged forward, snarling at the others, bullying them back, but they resisted, and every jackal managed to get at least a mouthful. The viciousness of the animals took the trader aback. "Steady," he said. "Steady, boys." Then the jackals ran off, south again. Their loyalties were only to the pack. They ran faster now, a bit furiously, down to New Cavendish Street, where the fence bent perpendicularly to the right. Tick, tick, tick flashed the fence. A black cab clattered into the road and down a very narrow lane toward George Street. They gave chase. They had lost all their caution. Eventually the dogs came to the high Anglican church, St. James, an exquisite neo-Gothic structure built on the site of a chapel where Spain had, 4 centuries before, tried to organize a coup d'etat against Elizabeth I. The doors were wide open, strangely, and alive with human sense. A very old eccentric priest, one Father James Drury, had risen early, as was his custom, to pray for all airline travelers in the night skies.
He knelt with difficulty near the altar. At age 86, he had been under persistent pressure from the bishop to retire, but Father Drury felt pride in saying the occasional liturgy he was permitted to lead. He had strongly resisted moving from the rectory to the point of frank irritation among his younger colleagues. He had just unlocked the main doors and flung them open as he always did. Often, at this hour, one or two rough sleepers would find their way up from the maelstrom of Soho and enter the church for a kick in the pews. Father Drury never asked them to leave. Tonight, he knelt down near a man bold enough to use a sleeping bag in the church. He had started his long prayer, asking for those 10 miles up in the sky who hurtled at the speed of sound while watching edited versions of Dreams of Antarctica to be protected from all danger of collision, of fire, of explosion, of fall and bruises and evil through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Who knows how many souls Father Drury's intercessions vouchsafed for that morning meeting in Brussels. When the jackals came into the church, they scampered right up the nave toward the chancel, their tongues hanging out. The nave's pale colonnettes of Purbeck marble and the faultless groining of its arches gave the jackals a feeling of calm. Another homeless man, one Father Drury hadn't known was present, had seen the animals. He rose from a pew and simply left the church, carrying a small red rucksack and saying nothing. The sound of the man caused the priest to look up. He doddered carefully up to his feet, gripping one of the marble altar rails, and the jackals immediately surrounded him, sensing weakness in his rich, salty skin. "Brothers," said Father Drury, "I suppose you have done harm in this world, but you will also be forgiven." He began walking down the main aisle toward the door. "Now get along." The jackals followed. When Father Drury reached the narthex, he felt a great fatigue grip him. He sat down on an oak bench beside a silver dish of holy water set into a carved font, and he sighed. The jackals crowded round him. He could see them panting rapidly, and he felt pity. "You're thirsty," said the priest. "You mustn't irritate others now. Do I have that promise?" He worked a silver dish out of the font as he did every Tuesday to gather it for cleaning, carefully avoiding spills. It looked like a simple mixing bowl. With some difficulty, which made his ribs and his back ache, he hunched over and placed the bowl on the stone floor. The jackals lapped the water greedily. Father Drury made the sign of the cross 5 times, once over each animal, blessing it. When the jackals finished drinking, they ran out, excited, and finally traveled in separate directions to join London's thousands of stray dogs. It was the last time wild jackals were seen on Earth. That's all. Thank you very much.
Questions? Throw them at Bill.
Sure.
And if there aren't, then you can sit at your throne and wait for them to bring their book to you to sign. So, any questions about the book or anything?
What's your favorite animal in the book?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. Well, the one that's the biggest one is the sand cat. That's the one that has the most, it's the biggest sort of starring role. And maybe the penguins or the sand cat, but my favorite is the sand cat. His name is Mweza, and he's from Chad, you know, and I love him. He's and I think you'll see that I love him in the book. So that's a great question.
Bill, I have a question.
Sure, yeah.
Your first creative writing class at Miami was mine.
Yeah,
It's the first
yeah.
I taught.
Oh, I didn't know that. That changes everything.
But my question, I never encountered a student after you who met, I mean, you were just, you had it. You had it then, right?
Wow.
You did. And I'm curious about when you started writing. As a young child, or did you know you wanted to be writing?
Yeah, my friend Rob Cherry, who's from this band called the Plastic Ants, is here, and with his bandmates, by the way, back in the back.
He probably could answer this question better than I can, because like, I think I was writing some stuff that like, because he's a friend from childhood who lives here, and I think I was writing like when I was maybe, was I writing poetry when I met you?
Yeah, certainly we met around the age of 16, so you were writing songs, lyrics, poems.
Poems, you know.
Often to share with young women that kind of
That's true.
caught his attention, and somehow they didn't appreciate his talents.
That is true, unfortunately. That was embarrassing. Yeah, I wrote poetry. I liked, well, first Wordsworth and Shelley, and then I really, Sylvia Plath, teenager.
Dylan Thomas.
Yeah, Dylan Thomas, yeah.
There, yeah. You reference him in some of the stuff.
That's Dylan Thomas. All the, kind of anything tragic and romantic, you gotta go for that. So,
Just like Keith, you were willing to take on big challenges, even, I think you might as a sophomore year, I think.
yeah.
But you were willing to write from the point of view of people, characters who were, whoa, like,
Yeah, see, I have trouble remembering.
oh, I'll tell you.
That's not.
I remember. It's great. Truly great.
I mean, honestly, the biggest thing for me, like having people who valued my writing was, I'm sure Keith has experienced this, just that makes you want to do more, and if you are interested in any kind of creativity, you got to have people who care about what you do, or you won't, it's really hard to work in isolation and have nobody